Somewhere, right now, in a galaxy that has been at peace through conquest for 10,000 years, there is a single line buried in a classified Federation report that every cadet is forced to memorize. Species Sol 3. Designation: Do not engage. Reason: they do not understand they have already lost. They simply refuse to stop. It started with 300 warships, the single largest invasion fleet ever assembled. An empire that had never once, in 10,000 years, retreated from a single battlefield. It ended 90 minutes later with the survivors begging their own council to never speak the word Earth again. And it all began with one junior officer gripping his console so hard his claws cracked the metal, whispering 6 words into the calm that would end up rewritten in every military academy in the galaxy. "Sir, they're throwing rocks at us." His commander laughed at him. "You're about to find out why that was the last mistake he ever made. Because this isn't a story about plasma cannons. It isn't about shimmering shields or antimatter drives or galaxy-ending superweapons. This is the story of how the most primitive species the galaxy had ever cataloged did something no empire, no armada, no advanced civilization had managed in 10 millennia. They didn't outsmart the gods of the sky. They didn't out-tech them. They picked up rocks. And they made gods bleed. Stay with me, because what these humans built in secret, 300 meters under lunar dust, is the part nobody saw coming. Rewind 6 months. The High Council of the Orion Federation did not measure strength in blood, or courage, or the stubborn refusal to die. They measured it in terawatts. They measured it in antimatter yields, in plasma density, and the sheer mathematical perfection of their energy shields. To them, the galaxy was a solved equation. And for 10,000 years, no one had dared to alter the variables. Then, they met the humans. Grand Arbiter Xyler stared at the holographic data floating above his desk, his 4 eyes blinking in a sequence that signaled deep, irritated confusion. "Explain this again, Commander," he rasped, his voice sounding like grinding stones. "The primitives, they rejected the standard plasma induction rifles we offered as a diplomatic gesture?" Commander T'Kallen bowed his armored head. "Not just rejected, Your Eminence. They laughed. The human general looked at our standard issue sidearm, called it a glorified flashlight, and asked if we had anything that actually kicked." "Kicked?" Xyler's mandibles twitched. "What does that even mean?" "It means kinetic energy, sir," T'Kallen replied, a genuine tremor of fear in his voice. "They don't use plasma. They don't use localized gravity wells. Your Eminence, they throw pieces of heavy metal using controlled chemical explosions. They are fighting a space-age war with rocks and fire." The Arbiter let out a sound that passed for a laugh among his species. "Rocks and fire. And they expect to pierce the Aegis-class thermal shields of our dreadnoughts? Let them try. If they refuse to join the Federation under our terms, we will show them why the galaxy fears the light." Word of the primitive savages spread fast through the fleet, and nowhere faster than the Grand Mess Hall aboard the Luminary, where the Federation's most decorated warriors gathered between shifts. Haasvaker, a 7-foot wall of chitin and scar tissue who had personally crushed 3 planetary rebellions, was watching the recovered footage on a wall screen. Human recruits doing push-ups in mud, marching in straight lines, cleaning rusted rifles by hand. He nearly choked on his ration paste laughing. "Look at them," he wheezed, slapping the table hard enough to crack a plate. "No phase armor. No neural reflex implants. They run on legs. They sleep 8 hours like helpless larvae. I have ended 300 wars, brothers, and I have never once feared a creature that bleeds red and breaks if you simply breathe on it too hard." The hall roared. Warriors banged their fists on the long steel tables, toasting with cups of fermented nutrient sludge, mimicking the clumsy human salute they'd seen in the footage. One young soldier did an exaggerated impression of a human voice, guttural, slow, stupid sounding, and the whole room dissolved into laughter so loud it rattled the bulkheads. Only one warrior didn't laugh. Sale, an old veteran with a milky scarred eye from a campaign no one else remembered, sat quietly at the end of the table, turning his cup slowly in his claws. "You've all seen their weapons." Osfacher called out to him, grinning. "Why so grim, old one? Are you actually worried about sticks and fire?" Sale didn't look up. "I served against the Corvus Swarm 300 years ago," he said quietly. "They had no shields either. No plasma. Just numbers, and a refusal to stop coming no matter how many we burned." He took a slow sip. "We won that war. But I have never forgotten how it felt to fight something that did not understand it was supposed to be afraid." No one was laughing at his end of the table anymore. But the silence didn't last. Hausfacher simply scoffed, raised his cup high to the rest of the hall, and bellowed, "To the Federation. To 10,000 years of victory, and 12 more hours until this is over." The hall erupted in cheers again. Sale said nothing more. He just kept turning his cup, watching the human footage loop on the screen, long after everyone else had stopped paying attention. He would be the only one in that room still alive by the next sunset. That was the Federation's first mistake. They thought because humans were loud, primitive, and fragile, they were easily broken. They didn't understand that on Earth, a death world where everything had evolved to kill everything else, humans hadn't survived by being the strongest or the smartest. They had survived because they were too stubborn to die. And when faced with an impossible wall, a human's first instinct isn't to climb it. It's to find a bigger rock to smash it to pieces. The Orion Federation's armada arrived in the Sol system not with the roar of engines, but with the terrifying silence of absolute dominance. 300 dreadnoughts, each spanning 5 kilometers in length, settled into orbit around Earth's moon. Their hulls glowed with the faint, shimmering blue hue of the Aegis-class thermal shields, a defensive barrier capable of absorbing the heat of a small star. In the command bridge of the flagship the Luminary, Grand Arbiter Xyler looked down at the blue-green marble of Earth. "Broadcast on all frequencies," Xyler commanded. "Let the primitives hear the voice of their masters." Within seconds, every screen, radio, and neural link on Earth flickered to life. Xyler's cold, multi-eyed face appeared before 8 billion humans. "People of Sol 3, Xyler's translated voice boomed. "Your defiance ends today. Your technology is obsolete. Your weapons are archaic. You have 12 solar hours to dismantle your military and accept Federation oversight. Attempt to resist, and your atmosphere will be turned to glass." He expected panic. He expected riots in the streets. Instead, the response came from a lone bunker in the frozen wastes of Antarctica, the United Earth Defense Headquarters. The screen flickered, revealing General Marcus Vance. He wasn't wearing a shiny, high-tech uniform. He wore a faded green combat jacket, had a scar running across his jaw, and was calmly pouring a dark, steaming liquid into a ceramic mug. "Arbiter, is it?" Vance said, taking a slow sip. "You've got a lot of ships up there. Very shiny. Very blue. They are the pinnacle of galactic engineering, human," Zyler hissed. "Your primitive minds cannot even grasp the mathematics behind our shields." General Vance smirked, a terrifyingly confident expression that made Zyler's lower mandibles twitch with unease. "Well, you see, son, we didn't do too well in advanced galactic math, but we're pretty damn good at physics. Specifically, Newton's laws. You've got 12 hours, you say? Thanks for the heads up. We'll be ready." The transmission cut to black. "Arrogant insects," Zyler spat. "Commander Colin, deploy the Vanguard. Destroy their orbital satellite network. Let them watch their sky burn." 60 Federation corvettes detached from the main fleet, racing toward Earth's satellite belt. Their plasma cannons charged, glowing with the purple light of superheated gas. They expected automated laser defense grids, or perhaps primitive missile silos that their point defense systems could easily vaporize. Instead, they found nothing. The satellites were just sitting there, completely defenseless. "This is a joke," Colin muttered from the Vanguard flagship. "Target the first array. Fire!" Before the plasma cannons could discharge, the bridge alarm screamed. It wasn't a standard lock-on warning. The ship's AI didn't recognize the threat. "Warning, high-density mass approaching at extreme velocity," the computer's artificial voice drone echoed. "Speed, Mach 45. Time to impact, 1.2 seconds. "What? From where?" Colin shouted. Through the viewport, he didn't see a beam of light or a trail of rocket fire. He saw nothing until the sky itself seemed to rip open. Far below, on the dark side of the moon, hidden inside deep craters, the humans had spent the last 3 months building what they called Project Slingshot. No electronics, no tracking signals, just miles of superconducting magnetic coils buried deep in the lunar crust. Coil guns. A solid, 3-ton slug of depleted uranium and tungsten, moving at 45 times the speed of sound, smashed directly into the lead Federation corvette. The Aegis shield flashed blindingly bright. The shield was designed to disperse thermal energy, to redirect plasma, to absorb radiation. But it was not designed to stop 3 tons of pure, unyielding density moving fast enough to tear through tectonic plates. The kinetic energy had nowhere to go. The shield didn't just fail. It shattered like glass under a hammer. The tungsten slug punched through the front of the corvette, traveled through the engine core, and exited the back, leaving a perfectly round, burning hole through the entire ship. The corvette exploded into a cloud of molten debris. "Report! What happened?" Zyler roared from the flagship as he watched his Vanguard screen go dark. "Sir! It wasn't a missile." Colin's voice was borderline hysterical over the comms. "They aren't shooting energy. They are throwing dense iron. The shields cannot disperse the physical weight." They are literally cracking our hulls with gravity and speed. Before Xyler could process the horror, the lunar surface lit up. Not with the elegant hum of lasers, but with the brutal, violent flashes of chemical and electromagnetic fire. The humans weren't fighting a space battle. They were treating the void of space like a muddy trench in the 20th century. More incoming projectiles, the eye screamed. Dozens! Hundreds! They are filling the orbital sector with debris. Xyler's tactical display turned into a nightmare of red flashing lights. The humans weren't just aiming at individual ships. They were painting the sky with metal. They had launched millions of tiny, jagged steel ball bearings into a counterorbit. At orbital speeds, a single steel ball bearing has the kinetic force of a hand grenade. Millions of them created a shredder. Federation ships trying to maneuver were being sandblasted to death. Their elegant, smooth hulls were being stripped bare, their sensors blinded, their external thrusters destroyed by an invisible storm of primitive garbage. Fall back! Raise all shields to maximum capacity. Move the dreadnoughts forward, Xyler ordered, panic finally creeping into his tone. Bring the heavy plasma batteries to bear on the lunar surface. Erase those craters. The massive dreadnoughts moved forward, their sheer size allowing them to push through the storm of debris, though their shields groaned under the continuous, rhythmic thumping of human kinetic slugs. They opened fire. Brilliant, blinding beams of green plasma rained down on the moon, turning the gray dust into boiling seas of glass. Human positions were obliterated, their coil guns melting under the extreme heat. Direct hits, Colin breathed, wiping blue sweat from his brow. The primitive artillery is silenced. Xyler allowed himself a breath of relief. See? Total technical superiority always wins. They fought bravely, but dirt cannot withstand stars. On Earth, inside the Antarctic bunker, the lights flickered as the shockwaves of the lunar bombardment registered on seismic sensors. An aide looked at General Vance, his face pale. Sir, the lunar batteries are gone. The Federation dreadnoughts are moving into low Earth orbit. They are preparing the atmospheric incinerators. General Vance didn't flinch. He reached down, picked up a heavy, old-fashioned telephone, and dialed a single digit. Activate the deep-sea rigs, Vance said quietly, and tell the boys in the Midwest to open the silos. The aide blinked. The silos? Sir, those are obsolete nuclear missiles from the Cold War. They won't even scratch their armor. Vance looked at the young officer, his eyes cold and hard as flint. Son, who said anything about explosives? We took the warheads out last month. Tell me, what happens when you take a 40-year-old rocket, fill its nose cone with 20 tons of solid concrete, and launch it straight up? The aide's eyes widened as the brutal, horrifying logic of human desperation finally clicked. We aren't trying to blow them up, the aide whispered. Exactly, Vance smiled, a dark, humorless thing. We're just dropping anvils from the sky. The Federation fleet descended into Earth's upper atmosphere. The massive dreadnoughts hung like metallic clouds over the world's major cities. Their underbellies began to glow with a terrifying crimson light. The atmospheric incinerators were charging. Inside the luminary, Grand Arbiter Xyler watched the countdown. 3 minutes until complete planetary compliance, he announced. Let this be a lesson to the rest of the galaxy. No one defies the Council. But on the tactical mapping globe, thousands of tiny heat signatures suddenly ignited across the surface of the planet. "Sir!" Colin called out, his voice cracked with panic. Multiple thermal launches detected across all continents. "North America, Asia, Europe. They are throwing thousands of projectiles at us." Siler scoffed. "Intercept them with point defense lasers. They are desperate." "We can't." Colin's hands flew across his console. "Our targeting AI. It's looking for radiation, electromagnetic signatures, or electronic guidance systems. These projectiles have none. They are completely dark. They are just dense, heavy tubes of metal and rock." Across Earth, thousands of decommissioned ICBMs and heavy space launch rockets had been stripped of their complex nuclear payloads. In their place, human engineers had poured thousands of tons of heavy-duty, reinforced industrial concrete wrapped in cheap steel casings. They weren't smart missiles. They were giant, flying bricks. The rockets burned through their fuel in seconds, using pure chemical brute force to reach escape velocity, aiming directly at the belly of the alien dreadnoughts hanging in low orbit. The first wave hit. A 20-ton cylinder of solid concrete, traveling at Mach 20, struck the forward dreadnought, the Vanguard. The Aegis thermal shield flared bright blue, attempting to superheat and disperse the incoming mass. It managed to melt the outer steel casing, but the sheer, compressed weight of the concrete didn't care about heat. The kinetic momentum remained absolute. The concrete block punched through the energy shield like a fist through wet paper. It slammed into the ship's lower armor plating, transferring millions of joules of kinetic energy instantly. The structural frame of the 5-kilometer dreadnought buckled. Bulkheads collapsed, decks smashed into one another, and the entire front section of the ship crumpled like an aluminum can. "Warning! Hull breach on decks 1 through 50. Structural integrity failing." The automated sirens screamed through the fleet. Then came the second rocket, then the 10th, then the 100th. It was raining anvils. The sky above Earth became an arena of absolute chaos. The advanced, elegant ships of the Federation were being systematically pulverized by the most primitive construction material known to man. Concrete blocks were tearing through reactors, shattering gravity drives, and snapping massive dreadnoughts completely in half. "Shields are useless," Colin screamed, pinning himself to his shaking console as the luminary rocked violently from a near miss. "They aren't trying to burn us. They are using our own gravity and their planet's mass to crush us. We have to retreat. Order the retreat." Siler stared at the viewing screen in absolute horror. One of his proudest cruisers was currently spinning out of control. A giant block of Earth's highway-grade concrete sticking out of its main bridge. How could a species fight like this?" Siler whispered, his mind breaking under the illogical brutality of it. "It's madness. It's suicide." The remaining Federation fleet, battered, smoking, and reduced to less than half its original size, scrambled to engage their hyperdrives to flee the system. The glorious invasion had turned into a slaughterhouse in less than an hour. Before the luminary could jump into hyperspace, the main viewer flickered again. The automated emergency override from Earth had breached their damaged communications array. General Marcus Vance appeared on the screen. The background of his bunker was chaotic, with alarms blaring and officers cheering, but Vance himself looked completely calm. He was lighting a small, paper cylinder and inhaling smoke, another toxic human habit. "Leaving so soon, Arbiter?" Vance asked, blowing a cloud of smoke toward the camera. "You are monsters!" Zyler roared, his pride entirely shattered. "You fight without honor. You throw garbage and rocks. You violate every mathematical law of civilized warfare." Vance took a slow drag from his cigarette and leaned forward, his eyes burning with an ancient, predatory fire that made Zyler's blood run cold. "We told you, son. We aren't good at your advanced math," Vance said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "But here's a lesson in human psychology for your council. We don't care about your civilized laws. You came here to turn our home into glass. You thought we'd bow down because your lights were brighter than ours." Vance gestured to the burning wreckage of the Federation dreadnoughts falling through Earth's atmosphere, lighting up the night sky like shooting stars. "On Earth, we have a saying," Vance continued, a cold smile touching his lips. "If you come to our house to kill us, you better bring a bigger hammer. Because if you don't break us on the first swing, we will take whatever dirt, rocks, and scrap we have left, and we will beat you to death with it." The general raised his mug in a mocking toast. "Give our regards to the Galactic Council. Tell them Earth is closed." The transmission cut. The luminary executed its emergency hyperjump, disappearing into the void, leaving behind the burning graveyard of the Orion Federation's finest armada. Somewhere on a recovered escape pod, drifting silently away from the wreckage, an old warrior with a scarred Milky Eye watched the fires of Earth shrink into the distance. Sale had not laughed in the mess hall. He was the only one of his crew still breathing. Earth had not used plasma. They had not used lasers. They had simply reminded the galaxy that no matter how high you climb into the stars, physics remains absolute. And if you push humanity far enough, they will always find a bigger rock.